The Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, GGDA, want to revive interest in the export market. The province's chief exports include precious metals, base metals and mineral products. Saiki Zamkaka, who is the CEO at the GGDA, contends that the market is more to offer and requires more participants. He joins us in our studios here in Johannesburg. Mr. Zamkaka, good morning to you and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning, Parisa. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming through. Now, let's just start first by understanding or you reminding us of the mandate of the GGDA.
The Gauteng Growth and Development Agency is an agency wholly owned by the Gauteng government. We mainly are responsible for two things: facilitating economic growth in the province and promoting trade and investment.
Now, your site says that you've assisted about 1,567 businesses to thrive, but I would want to believe this is just a drop in the ocean.
Indeed, that's through our Gauteng Investment Center. It's based in Sentin on 1 Sentin Drive. And the main purpose for that, we call it a one-stop shop, where you have different services that an investor coming to Gauteng would want, starting with visa applications if you're from outside of the country, revenue services, environment impact assessments, municipal approvals, incentives by the Department of Trade and Industry. So we try and make it easy for anybody who comes here to have one place that they can go to.
So that they can finish everything all at once.
Precisely.
Without having to travel around. But in terms of what we're talking about this morning, export market, what prompted the need for a discussion on exports?
Gauteng is effectively the manufacturing hub of South Africa. A lot of the manufacturing activity happens here. Also, Gauteng accounts for a third of the country's GDP. So if really South Africa's economy is going to grow, a huge portion of it should come from Gauteng. And our view is part of the growth is looking at markets outside of South Africa. So we've looked at the rest of the continent as a potential, particularly East and West Africa. We're putting a lot of efforts into that. We've looked at some markets in North, like Algeria. And we're looking again at the rest of the world, our traditional markets in Europe, but also we're looking at Eastern Europe as new markets where we've not traditionally been dominant.
So the markets have already been identified,
Yes.
like you're mentioning, some parts of the African continent and around the world.
Yeah.
But is it going to be easy for these entrepreneurs to actually tap in those markets? How are you going to be assisting them?
It's not easy, which is why we're getting into this drive of having the discussions on what can be done on export. So one, there are some incentives from the Department of Trade and Industry, which may include participating in trade missions to the countries of interest, information about the political and economic environment, information about regulations, export credit insurance at fairly discounted rates, funding, whether it's working capital funding or investment required through the Industrial Development Corporation or the Development Bank Southern Africa. So there are various instruments that are available for potential exporters.
All right, so you're partnering with the Department of Trade and Industry. What is their role in this regard? Is this just the incentive part of things, or do they even go beyond that?
Most of the things I've mentioned, export credit is through the DTI, the insurance, but there's even some direct incentives, whether it is tax-related incentives for exporters or subsidies for equipment or some of the manufacturing related. So there are specific incentives depending on what sector you're looking at.
All right, so who are you looking for specifically? I know there's an invitation on your website, but who is this message aimed at?
The ideal exporter is a South African business that already is in operation, has a market in South Africa and wants to grow. Exports by their very nature have certain difficulties about them. Firstly, you have to establish into a market you don't know. There are logistics costs. You have to understand the market that you're getting into. So it's often difficult for a startup to start into an export market unless it's a very high value product that can easily absorb those kinds of costs.
Because I actually wanted to ask, what about people who are interested in this sector but do not know how to go about? So you're not looking at unearthing such businesses, you're looking for the already developed businesses.
That's what I'm saying. The ideal one are businesses that are already existing, but you may find somebody who produces a product that is very niche and could potentially take on outside of the South African market much easier than it can even here. Or maybe you think that the South African market is saturated, but as I'm saying, there are naturally costs into exporting. So it would be I wouldn't advise a person to export into a market they, for example, have not physically been into. So you need to go there, you need to talk to people, understand the market. So even before you send the first product, there's going to be costs. So for a person who's starting up, it can be difficult. It is not impossible. You can start, but it's also important that as you get into it, you know exactly what you are dealing with. So you're going to need a bit of funding, whether it's your own cash or borrowed. So you need a bit of funding to carry you through until you can generate the cash flows.
So you've got to understand the ins and outs of this industry before. But generally, how can people interact with the GGDA in this regard?
We hold some of these sessions where we invite people to come and talk about exports. We partner with the DTI in doing some training where you can know the ins and outs of where you start, what you need to do to export, what is available. We make those invitations public, but if anybody misses them, you can go to our website, www.ggda.co.za, send us an email, and then we'll either answer your questions or invite you into the next sessions.
All right. And I made a mention on my introduction that your chief exports here in the province include metals.
Yes.
But what products are you looking into specifically in this regard?
Currently, the two sectors we prioritized. The first one is retail related. One, because we have a lot of South African retailers that are outside of South Africa, so they offer a platform. So we're saying those things that they import into those countries, we want them to buy in South Africa as much as they can, and those things that they can produce in the countries where they operate, that they produce them there. So that was the one part. The other one is capital equipment. We partnered with the Council for Capital Equipment Exporters who do mining equipment, engineering equipment, which we're naturally competitive on in South Africa. So those are currently the two sectors that we focused on, but we don't exclude anything. If somebody has any other product they want to export, we'll give them support. But for us, we focused on those sectors we think are labor absorbing, because we're doing all of this to have a backward benefit for Gauteng, which is employment growth and economic growth.
All right. No, we'll leave it at that, Mr. Zamxaka. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Balis.
Thank you very much indeed. That's the Chief Executive Officer of the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, Saki Zamxaka, telling us about just one aspect of the work of this diverse agency, whose key purpose is to ensure a smooth introduction into business for those who seek that help. So for more on this, there is the website on your screen, www.ggda.co.za, or you can go to Twitter, their Twitter handle at the GGDA, for more information. Let's quickly take a break here on Morning Live. When we come back, we'll give you 7 o'clock news bulletin.